There are stories that survive the passage of time, but there are also those that time itself chose to hide. Among the yellowed pages of the 19th century, a name whispers like a forbidden secret: Carmilla. Long before the world came to know the figure of Dracula, before the Count of Transylvania rose to fame as the great symbol of darkness, Sheridan Le Fanu had already given life, in the year 1872, to a creature that embodied both fascination and terror. Is it not curious that almost no one remembers this, as if history itself had erased her footsteps, as if unseen forces wished this memory to fade away? Who, after all, was Carmilla? A monster lurking in the shadows, or a reflection of the deepest human passions? The original work describes her like this: she was a beautiful young woman with delicate features, dark eyes, and lips full of an uncommon sweetness. Yet that sweetness concealed a deadly promise. What begins as friendship and tender care slowly transforms into something suffocating, possessive, inescapable. After all, how many times in life does what seems to be love reveal itself to be a prison? How often does seduction blur into threat? At the heart of the tale, Laura, the innocent young woman, becomes the target of an affection that at first seems gentle, but soon reveals its true nature. The story of Carmilla is not merely a gothic horror tale, it is also a mirror of our most intimate fears: the fear of loving too deeply, the fear of losing freedom, the fear of surrendering one's soul to someone who may consume it. And so, long before Dracula was enthroned as the father of all vampires, Carmilla was already walking across the pages of literature, offering kisses that were not only of tenderness, but of condemnation. But what truly lay hidden behind that bond? Was Carmilla nothing more than a predator? Or was she herself a prisoner of her own dark fate?
In the solitude of Laura's mansion, the arrival of Carmilla seemed like mere chance, a carriage accident, a plea for shelter. But chance, many times, is nothing more than the disguise of the inevitable. From their very first meeting, Laura felt a strange familiarity. Sheridan Le Fanu wrote, "I had the feeling that I had known her for a very long time and that our destinies were bound together by invisible ties." That connection was not simple. It was the seed of a bond that wavered between love and curse. The relationship between the two grew shrouded in tenderness and mystery. Carmilla was protective, gentle, almost maternal, yet also jealous, possessive, as if fearing to lose what she believed to be her only reason to exist. And here arises the question: to what extent does love, when transformed into possession, cease to be love? Laura, young and innocent, began to feel suffocated. The nightly visits, the intense gazes, the gestures marked by a strange melancholy revealed something far beyond friendship. Love was turning into an invisible net, tightening more with each passing day. Carmilla, on the other hand, was not merely a cold predator. Within her there was an ancient sorrow, a weariness that echoed with longing, as if in every gesture there was a lament. The vampire did not seek only blood. She longed for companionship, for eternity, perhaps even for redemption. But what could be more terrifying than discovering that the love one receives does not arise from freedom, but from the desperate need of someone who refuses to let you go? Time passed and the signs became impossible to ignore. Laura grew weaker, as though her very energy was being drained slowly, while Carmilla blossomed with a vitality ever more unsettling. Each night the embrace grew tighter. Each morning, Laura awoke more fragile. Seduction had become possession, love a silent pact from which there was no escape. And then, standing before the mirror, Laura began to see what her soul had already foreseen.
The mirror never lies. It returns not only the image of the flesh, but also the reflections of the soul. It was before the mirror that Laura began to perceive what she did not wish to accept. Her eyes, once filled with life, now carried an inexplicable weariness. Her skin, once rosy, seemed to lose its color with each passing day. And behind her reflected figure, there was always a disturbing absence: Carmilla. In European tradition, the mirror was often seen as a boundary between worlds. Hungarian folklore declared that the soul hides within the reflection, and in the tale of Lefanu, the absence of Carmilla within the glass was the silent confession of her true nature. Laura tried to forget, tried to convince herself that it was nothing more than imagination, but the mirror reminded her of what her mind wished to erase. And each time her gaze returned, the emptiness beside her own image condemned her. Carmilla was there, yet she did not reflect. The doubt became unbearable. Who was the true prisoner? Laura, ensnared by the vampire's charm? Or Carmilla, condemned to wander through the centuries, burdened with a thirst that would never be satisfied? There is something profoundly human in this dilemma. How many times do we find ourselves bound by ties that seem tender, yet drain our very essence? How often does love transform into a cycle of pain and attachment? The nights grew longer. Laura's dreams were invaded by strange visions, the weight of a body upon hers, a cold kiss that burned, the shadow of a woman who loved her with an intensity almost divine, and at the same time was slowly killing her. The mirror, symbol of truth, had now become an enemy. It revealed what no word dared confess. The presence of Carmilla was no blessing, it was a sentence. And yet, there remained something impossible to deny. Carmilla sometimes wept, as if her very eternity were a punishment. Could one feel pity for someone who, at the same time, was their destroyer?
It was among ancient ruins that the climax arose. The revelation of Carmilla's true identity led to the inevitable hunt. Beneath the weight of old promises and forgotten rituals, men armed with faith and steel resolved to bring an end to the creature who walked between life and death. Lefanu's description is clear. At last, after gloomy ceremonies, her body was pierced and her head severed. A cry arose, as though the very night had lost her favorite daughter. The fate seemed sealed. The vampire who had hidden beneath the skin of a charming young woman had been defeated. Yet the question that echoes does not lie in the bloody end, but in the silence that followed. Was Carmilla merely a monster, or was she a lost soul, imprisoned within a cycle of longing and solitude? Laura survived, but she was never the same again. Within her heart, the memories still whispered. How could she forget the eyes that gazed upon her with both tenderness and hunger? How could she erase the touch that mingled love with destruction? The story of Carmilla is more than a Gothic tale. It is a mirror of human contradictions. It is the reminder that love and death, desire and captivity may dwell within the same embrace. Long before Dracula claimed the stage and the immortality of popular culture, Carmilla already bore the crown of the first literary vampire. Yet her figure reaches beyond the myth. She compels us to ask, how many times do we ourselves become prisoners of loves that consume us? How often do we seek salvation in another, only to find the loss of our very selves? Perhaps Carmilla was not only a predator of the night, perhaps she was also a prisoner of her own yearning, condemned to seek eternally what she could never possess. And now, before all this, the question remains, was Carmilla the first vampire of literature, or merely the reflection of our own ghosts? If this story has awakened in you a new way of seeing the myths, then subscribe to the channel and journey with me into other forgotten secrets of humanity.
For there are stories that can no longer remain buried.